Sponsored by Gillette, the best a man can get.
Back here, first things first, Super Bowl champ Chris Canty joins the conversation this morning. Happy Monday, Chris. Nice to see you.
Good to see you, Jenna. A lot going on in week 3 of the NFL, so let's get to it.
You
Absolutely.
took all my words away.
I'm just trying to help you out, Jenna. You know, the more you can do, the more valuable you are.
Sunday night football.
I need you here Friday, man. Danny Cannell, man.
Oh, man.
We'll talk about that off here. Jenna, tell us what's going on.
Let's talk some Rams and Browns. We are going to jump ahead to Cleveland's final drive. Down 7. Ball on the 4. First down, Baker. Incomplete to Jarvis Landry. Second down, Baker. Incomplete to Jarvis Landry. Third down, Baker. Incomplete this time to tight end Demetrius Harris. One last chance. Fourth down. Baker picked off by John Johnson, and that would seal the game. The Rams escape with a win. For the Browns, another rough outing for their much-hyped offense. They fall to 1-2 on the season. Here's head coach Freddie Kitchens after the game.
You know, if you're looking to blame somebody, blame me. Don't blame any of our players. Don't blame any of our other coaches. Just blame me because I can take it, all right? So, you know, just blame me. Go write your article and say I messed the game up. Go write your article and say it's my fault the thing's not looking like it did last year because of this.
You know, we got nothing but support for Coach Freddie. He's done a phenomenal job, so just got to take a look at the film.
I mean, I know what you guys are going to try and do is talk about the play calling, but you know what? That's why I said execution's the most important thing. You know, whatever we have called, we got to do our job.
Brown's really big on making sure everyone knows who is to blame and why. But do you, like Freddie Kitchens, think this all came down to play calling, Chris?
Well, I think a big part of it did come down to play calling. You look at that last sequence, you got goal to go, 43 seconds, and the ball on the 4-yard line, and you're in the shotgun in all of the plays, and then 3 out of the 4 you're in empty. I just don't understand that from a philosophical standpoint. When you get down into the red zone, the field gets condensed. So why would you want to spread it out? I think if you're trying to throw the ball into the end zone, you would want to condense the formation, and then you have an opportunity to be able to attack the edges and in the back part of the end zone. You didn't have that opportunity with that. And then, of course, with having all of your timeouts, you don't try to run the football once. Like, I just think that that's inexcusable. Also, you had the 4th and 9 earlier in the fourth quarter at midfield, and you decided you're going to run a draw play with Nick Chubb. That didn't make a lot of sense to me. So there are some tough things to explain from a play calling standpoint, game management standpoint. But in looking at Freddie Kitchens in the postgame, the part of it that bothers me the most, Nick, is when you looked at what he said. He said, talking about go write your articles, and I know what you guys are going to try to do, and just blame it on me and all of this stuff. I don't understand why everybody in the Cleveland Browns organization is obsessed with what the media and naysayers are talking about in regards to their football team.
Because this is what Baker did last week.
But why don't you focus on trying to execute better? That's what you need to be worried about. You don't need to be worried about what the sports writers are going to do and what they're going to talk about. Leave that for us to talk about on television. You worry about trying to win a football game. Your head coach and your quarterback are supposed to be the ones that set the agenda and try to get the team to focus on the things that are important to win. They're focused on everything but what it takes to win. And in a game where your defense gives you an opportunity, forces 3 turnovers, including 2 in the second half, and you only come up with 3 points, to me, that's the reason why you're losing football games. So do a little less focusing on what the media is talking about and lock in on execution.
Well, and that last turnover you mentioned, I mean, that was a gift where it felt like the Rams could run the ball and salt the game away. Tipped pass interception, all of a sudden you're in business if you're Cleveland, and they still can't take advantage. As far as to answer your question, Jenna, is it all on Freddie Kitchens? No. However, despite all of the disorder on the offensive line, how ineffective Baker was, if Freddie Kitchens calls a better game, they might steal a win. They might at least force overtime. I was watching the game with the sound off. I thought the 4th and 9 draw play, the graphic was wrong. I was like, oh, for some reason it's 3rd and 9, and because I've never seen it. My whole time, I've never in my life watching football. Chris said earlier the tracking data only goes back to 07, but it's literally never happened since at least 07, a team running a draw play on 4th and 9 or longer. It makes no sense. And then to your point, yeah, 1st and goal from the 4, when your run game's been relatively effective, when you have all your timeouts to not only never run, but you mentioned lining up in shotgun and then in empty, to not even have the threat of the run, to not even be able to use either play action or the fact that you might run the football to your advantage. Of course, those are mistakes. But this was a bigger issue than those singular mistakes. The offensive line got whooped again. Freddie Kitchens was an issue with the play calling, fine, but also having the offense ready to go from the beginning of the football game was an issue with them settling for field goals early and being wholly ineffective offensively. And then Baker has not been good yet this year. Baker's yet to have even what I would call a pretty good game yet this season. Odell in week 2 made his numbers look better than they actually were if you were watching the football game. So Kitchens has not been great. The offensive line has been bad. And Baker has not been the Baker we saw last year yet. All of those things are huge concerns for the Browns, and that's how you're 1-2.
And yet their defense, riddled with injuries in the secondary, managed to hold the Rams in check most of the night. Probably their weakest unit was the one that actually played the best yesterday.
Yeah, they really played well. 3 of their 4 starters out of the game. It's hard to be competitive when you're able to do that, especially with the offense that the Rams and what they do to you. So, yes, the defense was outstanding, played well enough to be able to win. Back to the goal line stand. So, just so people understand, all right? They have 4 plays inside the 10-yard line with an opportunity to win. The reason why you don't go empty with Chubb is because he's not a good receiver, all right? If he's a dual threat that he can catch the ball in the backfield, then you move him out there because he had the best matchup. He had moved him outside the numbers, and he was one-on-one with the guy. Also, what Freddie Kitchens is going to have to do, a lot like Dallas, and the reason why Dallas struggled a little bit last year in the red zone, in those condensed areas, Baker's got to run the ball, all right? So if you go empty, if he's a threat to be able to run, it puts a different wrinkle for the defense, and it breaks down a lot of the principles. They didn't have anybody to account for Baker. So if they had went empty and going quarterback draw, I believe that would have been, but the 4th down call, it affected him once they got down to the red zone. Once they got stopped on the 4th and 9, he knew it was a bad call to run on 4th. When they got inside the red zone this last series, he's still thinking about, that was a bad call. And if I run it again, which he should have run it one time, then I'm going to get criticized. So it's hard to learn how to be a coach in this league, and that's what I saw more in this game. A young offensive play caller now trying to manage the whole game made a couple of mistakes and prevented this team from trying to steal the win there at the end.
Yeah,
Canty.
and another part about this, too, you got to stop the self-inflicted wounds. The Cleveland Browns are one of the most penalized teams in the National Football League. They're tied for the most called penalties. They've got 46. They've got the most accepted penalties, 35 for over 300 yards. So at some point, your head coach has got to instill a level of discipline in your ball club. And if you're averaging 15 penalties called on you in every single game, it's going to make it hard to win in this league. So at some point, the Cleveland Browns have got to get out of their own way and give themselves an opportunity to close out ball games. As CC says it all the time, games are lost as much as they are won in the National Football League.
Yes.
At some point, for a young team, they've got to understand what it takes to be able to win games. And to try to win games, the first thing you got to do is avoid doing the things that cost you games.
So the play calling you can put on the coach, the penalties, for the most part, you can put on the coach. Talk to me about Baker Mayfield. Why such a struggling start to the season?
Listen, I have been incredibly high on Baker. I know CC has as well. The one red flag for Baker going into this year was how he did against good teams. That he was that he was exceptional against bad teams and bad defenses, and against good teams, he struggled mightily. He now falls to 7 losses in a row against teams that finished last year with a winning record. The quarterback rating against those teams is 74 versus a quarterback rating of 108 against teams that had a losing record last season. And so Baker Mayfield, when good teams probably have better pass rush. Good teams obviously have better secondary. Good teams. Baker Mayfield against good competition, he has not been great. And that is a concern. Now, I trust Baker as a thrower. I trust Baker as a leader, all these things. But we saw in the game, Chris, I thought he was running a little too early, escaping the pocket. You said some of that's his height. Some of that is that he...
Where are you going to go?
That he has to... that he's... Even if he... It looks like he might have a clean pocket, that he's not seeing the passing lanes, that he has to escape to his right. He's not helping the offensive line in that regard, in my mind. But that might be a continued trend because he is 6 feet tall.
Canty, you have something on him in the pocket?
No.
But when I'm struggling? But why would you stay in the pocket when I can't depend on the integrity of the pocket? Last night in the telecast, Collinsworth said he thought that he scrambled out a little too early. Well, that's what happened to young quarterbacks, let alone guys that are short. When you can't see and you start to get interior pressure, and by the way, Chris, Aaron Donald is playing on the other side. So to get spooked, it'd be the game to get spooked in. So Baker, they have to try to clean up the pocket. That's what they did at a high level last year when Freddie Kitchens took over and was calling plays.
And they got a tough test next week in the Baltimore Ravens. So if they're going to clean things up, let's hope they do it in a week. Canty, stick around. Coming up next, Daniel Jones had a debut to remember. That's next on First Things First.